So it's time for our second debate. Our expert witnesses, as you can see, are already on stage, so let's crack on. And this debate is titled New Ecosystems, New Relationships, New Models. I don't think we have any hedgehogging in this one, but we'll see. There's only time will tell. So the evolution of the telco affects its partners, suppliers, business models. What new ecosystems are being created through evolving relationships with digital partners and markets? What changes are happening to the supplier landscape? How is open networking affecting relationships? And how does this affect telco service innovation? Well, we're going to hear some opening remarks from our expert witnesses. So our first witness is Maria Lema, who's co-founder of Weaver Labs. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So over the last 5 years, there has been a profound shift in the telecoms ecosystem. We have gone from 4 to hundreds of suppliers. Technology still needs to be mature, but there are a lot of companies building products that are being bought by smaller, more specialized networks. We have seen lower barriers of entry. Before, we could only sell to a handful of operators in the country. Now, there are multiple of private networks buying products of smaller players, like us. However, the adoption is mainly constrained to those smaller networks, whereas MNOs and large carriers are much slower at embracing this new ecosystem. We are at the crossroads of another bellheads versus netheads battle. This time between traditional ecosystem players, let's call them the closed heads, and the new paradigm, let's call them the open heads. The closed heads claim that networks must be highly specialized, highly reliable, and follow strict hierarchy. They defend vertical integration, proprietary tech, and promote existing market dynamics where a few control the entire supply chain. The open heads favor open source software, collaboration, and decentralized decision-making. They defend this new ecosystem underpinned by fully virtualized networks, which favors new service differentiation based on software and new monetization models based on open APIs. 5G has proven not to change consumer behaviors. For the closed heads, it has only meant a new G. However, for the open heads, it has revolutionized the industry from the inside. Geopolitics may have triggered all of this, but open networks has made it possible. It is not only that we have a larger number of vendors in the RAN, but now we have innovation top and bottom of the network. We have hardware innovation to support the RAN in commercial off-the-shelf servers. We have new applications that enhance the network with AI and energy management. We have orchestration of the cloud that supports edge to cloud continuum, convergence, as well as automating deployments and lifecycle management. We have also diversified the supply chain in who builds, owns, and operates networks. The next step in the journey is to make the open heads thesis the de facto approach. Realistically, is the only way we can keep growing and deliver the connectivity services with new monetization models, making money while the application layer makes money. Potentially give birth to hundreds, if not thousands, of specialized service providers that operate over neutral infrastructure. Thank you.
Wow. Look at that. 3 seconds to spare, and we've heard about closed hats and open hats. Fantastic opening there. Thank you very much, Maria. Our next expert witness is Mark Gilmour, Chief Technology Officer at ConnectiviTree Europe. Mark, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ray. So I'm going to come at this from an operator perspective, and in particular a wholesale B2B operator perspective, and talk about, well, inherently the telecom market is regionalized. It's a regional play. It's focused in a given geography. And the customer, well, the customer, particularly the large enterprise, well, they think globally. And so being able to meet that demand, well, then how does a localized regional player be able to meet that across a global space? Now, we've tried it before to be global operators, and the reality is that just doesn't really fit. And so now we start to look at, well, the way forward for that really is to be able to work together, alliances, ecosystems, partner organizations. And just like Maria just mentioned, to take that from a closed approach, well, that's one way of attacking it. But really, if we are to be able to really think in the terms of what the customer requires, how we meet that demand, then really we have to be able to embrace technologies, we have to embrace business models, we have to embrace the way forward in a multitude of facets, in a multitude of ways. Now, if we're, as an industry, are renowned for moving slowly, well, then we have to be able to adopt and adapt to open sort of approaches. That's why, from my point of view, I look at this in terms of if I'm creating a wholesale B2B player that sits in the middle there to create that global scale for my carrier partners, then I need to make that very easy for them to adopt. I need to make it easy for them to be able to pass on to their customers that the consumption of those services. Because ultimately, they don't really care about what sits behind it, as long as it meets the requirements that they have. Be that security, be that resilience, be that uptime, availability. Did I mention security? I think I did. Those are the things that matter. And we have to get closer to the customer, a little bit like the panel we had before, to be able to understand exactly what they require and deliver that connectivity piece, that wholesale piece, or that end-to-end piece expertly.
Boom. And this is, Mark actually paused and waited until the clock hit 0 there. That was kind of, so we need VAR on that, I think. Okay, so the ongoing struggle for easy international connectivity, and I think that's still an ongoing thing. Our next witness is Manish Singh, who is CTO of Telecom Systems Business at Dell Technologies. Manish.
All right, thank you, Ray. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Let me come at it from an infrastructure point of view. And coming from Dell Technologies, I think it'll only be apt to start with looking at the world of computing. As the world of computing moved from mainframes to PCs, what did we see? We saw innovation on steroids, innovation at every layer on silicon, memory, storage, interfaces, peripherals, operating systems, applications, on and on and on. We saw newer models, the advent of cloud computing and scale of cloud computing, now the advent of AI, and I can go on and on and on, i.e., the most important thing I'll say, no one company or a handful of companies own compute infrastructure, innovation on the compute, et cetera, et cetera. It's an ecosystem. Look at the world of comms. In the world of telecom, what have we seen? Over the past 2 decades, massive consolidation of supply chain, handful of suppliers who are providing the infrastructure. When the lock-ins have arrived, innovation has stifled. We are living on a G per decade. And that's the world we are in. So as we really look forward and where we go from here, the opportunity is massive in terms of opening, disaggregating the entire ecosystem, both from supply side, plus with other partners who are bringing in applications and more. Let me just say this. Along the journey, we also had pandemic. And one of the things we realized is how important networks are, how important connectivity is. It kept us productive. It kept us connected with our loved ones. And it is a critical infrastructure, which a lot of the governments are taking note of. We also learned through the pandemic the supply chain risks that emerged. And telecom is not free from those either. And so when we take a holistic view, the path forward starts to become very clear. We need to drive more openness, more disaggregation, diversify the supply chain, drive more innovation. And as we start to look at not only how we build the networks going forward, but putting that infrastructure where we can bring in different applications and really, really start to unlock the value that edge and AI is going to deliver. In particular, I want to touch on inferencing. That's a massive opportunity. We had a previous panel which talked about identity, which was okay. I actually tend to think edge, with bringing in newer applications, unlocking the value of data, and inferencing for AI is the real opportunity for the telcos to really start to seize. And with that, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Manish. So we're getting a real diversity of sort of takes on this topic here. And let's see if we have further diversification from our final expert witness. You've met him before. He's back again. It's Werner Schaefer, VP of Sales and Marketing Group, General Manager of Network and Comms Sales Group at Intel. Werner.
I promise you it's my last debate panel, Lema.
You think?
So far, there we go. So why I'm here, obviously ecosystem is a huge play around that. We heard about that. And I would actually look at it very positively if we look back and saying, hey, we've done a lot as an ecosystem helping the industry go forward. NFV, anybody? Right? That was a dream 10, 15 years ago, and then we all collaborated on, we brought the ecosystem together. And if you think about the announcement that you just heard earlier in the week, that one of the behemoths in this industry from Sweden just said, we're for Open RAN, and we're gonna go and we change our business model, basically, right? So as an ecosystem, we are driving change in this industry and helping. And obviously, in that evolution, we have to do more. So rather than focusing on technology, I think our job as an ecosystem now is to actually accelerate that even more. And that means more collaboration. Collaboration in, it's not enough that we as individual companies go to an operator and pitch our piece parts and maybe we promise that it kind of works together. No, we have to go in and we have to show solutions to the operators, to everything that I said before, what I would like to see, that value that I want to utilize. I have now to go there with my partners in the ecosystem and say, and here's how we enable you, Mr. Operator, to go and bring that value for XYZ to your customers. Bring maybe even new business models. What's our skin in the game? Before, it was easy to say, well, the dotted line that was signed by Nokia or Ericsson, and if the brown stuff hit the fan, right, they were the ones on the hook for it. That does no longer work in such a disaggregated world, in where we have more players now, so many more players, smaller players. Well, they can sign under the dotted line, but they don't have the money to pay for when it doesn't go wrong. Right. So how do we do that as an ecosystem? How do we get together? How do our alliances work with each other? How do we enable an operator to go to market faster? When we hear it takes 24 months to bring a new service to market, that is nothing compared to what a hyperscaler can do in days or maybe weeks with a new plug. So how do we enable that? How does a Dell, an Ericsson, a Nokia, an Intel, Juniper, how do we shorten those time? How do we integrate our pieces to be faster and to enable the operators to bring those new services and the value that we all want? That's, I think, the answer that we have to find quickly in order to get the money to pay for 6G for the operators. That's my pitch, and I gave you some time back.
You did. Wow, Verna. Now, should I fill those 25 seconds or no, I don't think. I think what we'll do is, as we've heard from all our expert witnesses, we will go straight to the great debate telco motion for you all to vote on. Remember, you've got your paddle pros. We'll be using that later. But first, we need to hear from Chris and Graham, who will introduce the motion and present the arguments for and against.
Thank you, Ray. So the motion is, as you can see on the screen, telcos have nothing to fear from the open API approach. And as we said earlier, Alexa flipped a coin. And Chris is speaking again for this motion, and I am against it.
But first of all, can I just comment, Ray? Your voice has dropped by several degrees, so don't fill in too many things. Have you been doing something before?
No, I didn't have enough to drink last night.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what it was.
Just checking, because actually, when you first spoke, I wasn't sure it was you. I thought it was Jeff again. But So, ladies and gentlemen, actually, we could even say, my lord, ladies and gentlemen, so given the Mr. Lord Holmes at the back there. The topic, and as we say, we always try and find something which is at the heart of the matter, but also slightly tangential. So we put APIs in there as the motion to say that there is nothing to fear for the telcos. And I think, interestingly, for all the different perspectives that the witnesses have given us there, really bring this out in all of its dimensions. On the one hand, how we build the infrastructure, how we build towards the services that we deliver for the customers to be more open and use APIs to make sure we can exchange information liberally. And we didn't even touch upon data. I thought Werner was going to touch upon the data side again in there, but there is obviously how do we make that information flow to help the telcos, to help all the services flow through. Now, I think one of the most important things about thinking of this as an ecosystem is that nobody can do it all themselves. And we know in the past, the fully vertically integrated telco was where we control things end to end, was what we thought we were going to, one of the reasons why we haven't moved forward in many respects. So, but actually, the openness of the ability of APIs and the work that the TM Forum has been doing on open data architecture and, of course, other APIs shows that there is a great appetite for actually taking on board these things and opening up and freeing up information flows. You know, this is not about technology. It's about the information flows and working towards delivering and supporting that broader economy. I often think of it in terms of, in the past, we were an inside-out model where we defined technology, we did it in the labs, we eventually exposed it to the customer, and we thought they should be grateful for the technology. We now have to react to all of those endpoints, whether we think they have an identity or not, whether robots, all the sensors, all those things, as well as people and businesses. So reacting to that, of course, we can't do all of that within the telco, but the openness of APIs will give us that ability to bring the value and actually expose the value. And I think there is nothing to fear for the industry in terms of opening up the supply chain, but most importantly, opening up the value as it gets exposed out there into the economy. So I encourage you to vote for the motion. Graham.
Thank you. My lord, ladies and gentlemen, and dog, boys and girls.
There's two dogs.
There's two dogs.
Yeah.
I'm encouraging you to vote against the motion, right? And I think this is very important. It's very important. Now, you've been hearing a lot from our expert witnesses about open APIs on the telco supply side. I just want to draw your attention to open APIs on the demand side. And I want to take you back to November 1519, which was an important day in telecoms. November 1519 was the day in which Hernan Cortes arrived at the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan in Mexico, what is now Mexico, with 200 Spaniards and about 1,000 to 2,000 local warriors from a different tribe. And the Aztecs, we don't know exactly what the Aztecs were thinking when these guys turned up, but we know that they did not think that the Spanish were gods, and they let the Spanish in. And from what we can tell, they were very interested in finding out about the new tech that the Spanish had. Spanish had steel swords, they had horses, they had cannons. Aztecs were very, very interested, and they were thinking, maybe we can use this stuff for our own advantage. And as you know, ladies and gentlemen, it did not end well for the Aztecs. It did not end well. Their entire city was destroyed, and approximately half the population died from violence, starvation, and disease over the coming 2 to 3 years. Now, why am I telling you this? Because the telcos are the Aztecs. And all of those people, Microsoft and Amazon and Google, all of those people who want APIs into your systems, they are the Spanish. And they're not bad people. I'm not saying they're bad people. They're not bad people, but they will kill you. You should vote against the motion. Thank you very much.
So we still don't know exactly how much red wine was consumed, but now we can have a good guess in litres, not. So there we are. That's our motion. But before we use our paddle pros, we're going to open up the debate to the audience and talk about this for the next half an hour or so. and see whether we can come up with some convincing arguments either way. So I can see a hand at the back there. If you can state your name and your company, and then we'll work our way around the room.
Raj Yavatkar, CTO, Juniper Networks. So I think open APIs itself is a wrong architectural approach, in my opinion, because what will happen across telcos, they will define APIs like we used to do with Windows APIs in last century. But then there will be variations of those APIs because every telco wants to be different Snowflake. So APIs will come with its variations. And I want to give an example of two companies. One of them I work for, Intel versus NVIDIA, and why NVIDIA today is a $1 trillion company and Intel is not. Intel always created this open ecosystem called horizontal ecosystem with APIs so that other people can add value. NVIDIA, on the other hand, said that's not enough. We need to solve customer problems by providing complete solution. So they defined APIs, but in addition, they added libraries and software so that anybody could build a complete solution, which is already validated. So unless telcos take that approach, for every use case, they say, how can I not just stop at APIs, but start adding actually whole solution stack, independent of which telco it is. Then only we'll be able to solve actual problems, in my opinion. But knowing telcos and how snowflakey they want to be, APIs and its variations will not work, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's come to the panel first to find out if the Snowflake impact is going to destroy the concept of open APIs. Does anybody have any thoughts on that on the panel? I can see you're all jumping up. I don't know who to choose here. Okay, Mark.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. I can see where you're going on that thought process. One thing for me, though, is looking at interoperability across, and I think that's where open APIs can really give us a benefit in terms of that interoperability between players. You know, much as I mentioned in my little 3-minute pitch there, we very clearly understand that we can't do it all on our own. And so therefore we need to have that interoperability into either other carriers, into vertically into software chains, for example, application level. And so I think we have to adopt, or certainly our opinion is we have to take an adoption there from a baseline point of view. I do, however, like the idea of adding value on top of that and bringing something extra to the piece. And that can either be done individually or collaboratively in a kind of a collective manner. And one of the things that we're doing with that is a global alliance that we bring together of like-minded carriers, operators, providers, and an application or service providers to be able to provide those services to an end customer, be it an enterprise or a global enterprise or player in another industry, kind of adjacent.
You're talking here about building on top of open APIs, not developing a version of the API to make it closed.
Using it as a baseline to get that interoperability between players. And that's where you see an enormous benefit in that.
Maria, do you think this is possible? Can the service provider community do it this time?
They can. It's a technical problem and software can solve almost anything. I think that the NVIDIA versus Telecom's example is just not applicable because of the cost. Creating a vertically integrated solution and selling that to a customer is a lot more expensive for a telco because you have to deliver the infrastructure, you have to operate the network, you have to deliver the value on top. So, and it has been really clear from later, what has been happening lately in the industry, that the investment in order to keep up with that model is just too high. We cannot keep up with that model. And therefore, we just need to do something that we do really, really well, which is to provide the connectivity, interoperate amongst other partners, and open up to others to provide that value-added service. Because the capital and operational expenditure of networks is just too much. And we are saying, oh, but the application layer is making a lot of money and we are not. Well, why don't we just create new operating models such that we make money while they make money?
Business models.
So but basically you're saying that telcos do have nothing to fear and they should embrace the open API approach because that is the way to make money, not in the identity stuff we talked about earlier.
100%.
Okay. Any further thoughts before we come back to the floor here from the Manish?
Yeah, I think, I'll say, yeah, they have nothing to fear in my view in terms of embracing the open APIs. 2, APIs is part of the solution, not the complete solution in itself. As I said in my 3 minutes, getting the infrastructure right, expanding the ecosystem, developing the right kind of partnerships are all key fundamental pieces that have to be put in place. Then with the right kind of APIs, you start to create the pathways for monetization. And then last thing I'll say is, I think the analogy of Intel versus NVIDIA, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to speak about that, but in general, I'll say, I mean, any technology cycle goes through its own evolution. To prove certain kind of technology, sometimes, yes, you have to start with tighter integrations, prove the entire solutions out. But as that technology cycle gets more and more adopted, you start to see newer players, and you don't have to then provide the entire solution. I mean, this is exactly, if you think from the vendor side, is where the telco is right now. Which is, hey, we're going to bring in the big iron, fully vertically integrated application down to infrastructure, everything in, and that needs to change. And I'm sure in the world of AI and GPUs, we're going to see similar transformation down the road as well.
Okay. So far, what we're hearing is the Aztecs can sleep easy. Okay.
But Ray, I think the other thing what we're always trying to do when we put the motions out there and get people thinking about this is that it extends all the way through the value chain. Mm-hmm. So a lot of discussion around developers and who's developing services, who develops the apps that flow all the way through all of our businesses, all of our lives.
Well, we have to remember that this is about ecosystems and relationships. I'm sure we'll get onto the developer relationship shortly, but we've got a question at the back there and then we'll come there and then here.
Hi, Adam McGill, British Telecom. I've got a question about skills in telco. Right? How do we recruit and retain the people who can ride horses, load cannons, and use swords?
Do the Aztecs need the Spanish? Who's going to say that?
Well, I got the pass on not having to comment on the Intel market value, so it's good on that one, I guess. On the skill side, I don't think you will actually be able to hire those skills necessarily at the amount you need into your company. You will have to collaborate with others that have the skill, and that may even be more attractive to the people that have that skill than you may be. So we had a conversation about that yesterday actually at lunch around how can we, if we look in the room around us, right, and see who's sitting in this room, is this the age group, the skill sets that we need to get us to these new software-defined developments, etc., or are these other types of companies, other cultures maybe even that we have to collaborate with, that work then on projects that we need in the industry, and then they can go and work on other projects for other companies or other industries. So I think, again, back to that ecosystem, we need to broaden our ecosystem, and we need to be attractive to work with other younger maybe companies that have those skills and that bring them to bear, and we pay for them. I don't think we will be ever able to hire all those skills all the people with the skills that we would need to do it ourselves. And I don't think do it yourself is the approach that will be successful.
Ray, can I just jump in on that point for a second?
Yeah.
So I think I spoke on a panel like this at the DSP forum earlier this year. And I mean, if you go and speak to any final year graduate student in this country, anywhere in Europe, anywhere in the US, and you go, who would you really like to work for? They don't go for a big telco. They don't say that, right? Their aspirations, they don't want to work for the Aztecs. They want to work for the Spanish, right? This is where all the cool stuff happens. And as an industry, we're really, really kind of crappy at presenting ourselves to the world. You know, actually, there's a lot of really interesting things happening in our industry, but we don't communicate that. And I think we don't do a great job of attracting the talent that we need and retaining it.
I don't think they want to work for the Spanish and not the Aztecs. I just think that it is, we don't have enough leaders that are showing that, you know, we can attract money, we can attract innovation, and we can change the world. And ultimately, final year students, they want to change the world. And I agree with you in that sense that they feel that it's, you know, we're terrible at communicating that. But so we have a Telegram group with about 2,000 people that are not telecoms people. And I asked this question, like, would you consider a career in telecoms? And they said, like, I just don't know what you guys do.
Right.
And, you know, they all think about the engineer that goes and fixes 5 cables on the street cabinet. But by engaging in new ecosystems, opening APIs, creating more innovation, bringing quantum, AI, all those keywords that get into the TechCrunch news, they will come.
I guess the question is, would you like the telcos to pay you some money? And I guess the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
As long as they have something to do for them. But the skills thing is a really great point. And, you know, anything to fear, of course, traditionally, there's a lot of fear about not being in control and not having stuff in-house. But Mark?
Yeah, I was just going to come on to that point, that fear of not having it in-house, of not having complete control of that, and then developing something that is then bespoke, and then you have to maintain it, then you have to keep the release cycle going, and all of that sort of thing. That is very much the telco. That's how we think. And so when we're talking in this panel about new relationships, new models, new what was the other one? New ecosystems. Yeah. You know, it also comes back to actually new ways of thinking about things. I consider within what we're doing, we've got kind of 3 main projects that are running. One is building a network. That's what we do as telcos. 2 is building an alliance to be able to consume that network and across. And the 3rd is about creating the software stack or the means of being able to automate and make that process an end-to-end experience easy. And there's a whole load of technology that goes on behind that to make that work. But the end result, they're not necessarily interested in the technology that's behind it. Now, in the telco mindset, the network side of things, we got that nailed. We know how to do that. The alliance part is very interesting because that you start to bring in different mindset, different ways of thinking, different business models that you start to bring in. And then again, on the software development side and the architecture of that and the user experience and the user interface and all of that, that is again a different mindset. So why would I ask my optical network planner to get involved in that part? It just doesn't make sense. And so that's why I then look to my partners, my ecosystem, my supply chain, and go, okay, I need your support in here. You've got the skill set. Why do I then go and buy all of that resource in and run it myself and then have all the overhead of that when I need it for a bespoke amount of time and bring that in to develop and then manage it accordingly. So I think we have to look at it, and we're certainly looking at it in sort of different models of approaching that as well, and kind of confronting that fear head on.
Manish, did you want to come in quickly,
Yeah.
and then we'll go to the next question?
Yeah, I think this is a very important question. Skill, process, people transformation are the real challenge. It's not the technology. Technology, I think, is the easier piece in this whole transformation puzzle. The question of how do you attract the new talent and the right kind of talent with the right skills. If the if the worldview is the telcos are laying the cables and sending a tower climber, then that's the kind of talent that's going to be looking at the telco. If the telco starts to come out, that they are going to be providing more innovation, they are going to be doing more interesting works in AI, machine learning, newer technologies, then that's going to start attracting the right kind of talent. Telcos, it just so happens, are sitting on massive data sets, and the value of those data sets have not been unlocked. And so if the telco starts to really put investments and programs in place with AI, with machine learning, unlocking the values of those, that's what's going to, and also make sure that your target audience understands the kind of data sets that you're sitting on. That's what's going to bring them in. That's what brings them into the hyperscalers, is they understand that that's the kind of scale, both on the compute infrastructure and the data sets that they can get in there. And I think there is opportunity here for the telcos too, but it's got to be those kind of programs and that kind of messaging that's going to bring that in. And that's key to any transformation.
Okay, thanks, Manish. Okay, we'll come down here first because to Patrick, but we will come back to you, Dean.
Hi, I'm Patrick from Hardenstance. API security is extremely hard. And one of the reasons we know that API is extremely hard is that telcos have suffered substantial data breaches arising from poor API security. A couple of examples, T-Mobile in the US, Bharti in India. So, the idea that should telcos be willing to embrace the risk of APIs 100%, can they do it 100%? The idea that they have nothing to fear is kind of absurd. If I'm Vodafone, BT, O2 here in the UK, and I have a major data breach as a result of API security weakness or other, I face a fine of up to 10% of my annual revenues from Ofcom. So come back to it. The idea that there is nothing to fear is kind of ludicrous.
Okay, I'm not sure. I'm not sure we're going to get any comments from the floor there. That's just a really good point made. But Dean, did you want to come in? Here we go. Here we go. Yes. I hope we got that. I hope we got that on the streaming feed. Dean.
I think that APIs are potentially very valuable for telcos, but, and this sort of goes a little bit back to the comment before, I think the telcos should mostly be buyers and users of APIs rather than selling them. And I think it comes back to either using them to create products and services and solutions, using them internally between the different parts of their business. Maybe the B2B business unit uses API access to the RAN or the fixed network, which is how Amazon started at AWS, is it had internal APIs between all its different systems. So I think that the operator community in the sort of Kamara and Open Gateway initiative are very much focused on, can we monetize and sell APIs? I think that comes later. I think no developer is going to trust you unless you're using your own APIs.
Okay. Any comments from the panel on that? Maria?
I agree 100%. And I would even add to that the first key to show that is possible is to enable service differentiation by using software, leveraging internally those APIs, instead of saying, I'm going to be better, so operator X is better than Y because of where I put my antenna. It is because I'm leveraging data, I'm creating applications that leverage this data by using APIs, and he's not happy about what I just said. But yeah, so I fully agree. Internal usage first, and then show results, KPIs, and show that you can solve problems outside of your own ecosystem.
Okay, then we'll come to Robert here and then Neil. But if there are any more hands, please put them very high. Okay, there's more over here as well. But Robert?
Hi, Robert Curran from Appledore Research. These are huge topics, huge areas. I'm a fan of keeping things simple. Follow the money is kind of what's interesting to me. The question about how do you hire people who want to do cool stuff, would you pay them a shitload of money? And it's competitive, but it sort of demonstrates that telcos are behind in that battle. The other part of it is the what's in it for me. How do telcos make money? You can have all the APIs you want, APIs are great at letting you make things quickly. I mean, the likes of Uber sort of prove that. There's any number of companies who have made stuff really quickly. But at the end of the day, you've got to make money from it. And so my question is all of this is about kind of three things: innovation, security, which is a key point, and money. If you can't see where the money's coming from, and if you don't have a pipeline of innovation that's constantly trying to experiment, and that's part of the DNA, telcos are pretty crap at innovating at a service level. Great innovation internally within a network, arguably, that's a different point. But back to the money. All of this stuff is only going to work if you can see who's going to make money, who's going to experiment with things that could be useful, and that's going to attract far more developers than just the cool stuff. The last point, sorry, I just want to make, do telcos have nothing to fear? Do the Aztecs have nothing to fear from the Spanish? Yeah, there's lots to fear, but that's the whole damn point. Look out for what is going to bite you in the bum, and look out for what's the opportunity. Maybe the Aztecs and the Portuguese might have done better if they'd made an alliance early on. It might not have worked out differently in the long run, but it might have been different. So yeah, by all means, be alert, be fearful, but see the opportunity as well. It's a more balanced point. Sorry.
I'm kind of wishing I did more ancient history at school. I got all these.
And less gaming.
I was doing too much learning languages, C and C++ than history. But I mean, by the way, anyone who thinks telcos aren't using APIs, like every single thing in the telco network, from every customer journey, every single thing is using APIs today. They know how to do it. They've done it forever. I think, and I'm probably reinforcing what was just said, which is what API is actually going to make money? What APIs do customers care about? I've yet to see a customer ever come in and really ask about that. There are some, don't get me wrong, they do exist. They tend to be bigger organizations. But I really, I don't know what, we're using fear as a descriptor here. I think it's, how do we make money? And it's that simple, basically. But they can do it, and they've been doing it. There's one other thing, though, which is actually in the telco world, there's a kind of a gap here where we have something like the Camara Open Gateway project that people call network as a service, whereas many of us think network as a service is actually more about connectivity, and that's confusing the hell out of people right now. So I think we also need to get our own story about where this is. But I kind of think this feels like an old topic, and the openness of it, the whole internet runs on open source. So, again, it feels like an old debate to me.
Okay. Mark, did you want to?
Well, I'd just say that this motion could be defeated on the fact that the word fear is there in the title, and I don't think that is should be the motivating factor for the adoption or use or development. And I also don't think that this debate is just focused on API. It is a much broader topic. I agree with Neil on that operational APIs have been in use for a long, long time.
But this is open APIs really in the motion.
Yeah, but even so, open APIs, you can still use. They're still being used operationally in that, and technically, whether they're closed, whether they're self-developed, or whether they're part of an open standard, or an open approach, perhaps. Is there such thing as an open standard? But I do feel that the ability or the need to adopt those, it is a discussion that's moved on. I think it's accepted that is part of how we automate, which is another a wider topic. But I think it does pull into, particularly the question around security, is knowing where those APIs are actually being utilized and used and integrated with. Who are the partners? And that becomes part of that trusted ecosystem approach that we have to, rather than just throwing them out there into the world.
Okay. We had some hands up over here, so Francis, and then there was some other hands up over here. Yes, okay.
I think one of the important things, I'm a little critical of the word open APIs. As Neil said, there are APIs everywhere in telco. We use APIs all of the time. I think the important thing we need to understand is that a successful API is one that is used in whatever form that takes. The challenge in opening up the APIs, I think, is that we don't consider the sort of who is using our API. We expose what we can expose rather than what we need to expose for a particular developer community. We've mentioned Camara as an example. There's a great Camara interface, which is about bandwidth on demand. The issues on that is, can we actually expose that in a network today? We can't, because actually our cell sites don't have the headroom to allow five gamers on a single cell at the same time. We need the ecosystem behind it. And if we're not prepared to invest in that ecosystem to be able to deliver the API, we will only deliver the APIs that we think we can actually deliver, rather than actually satisfying the need. So back to the Aztecs, we need to be able to adopt the iron tools, but we also need the ecosystem behind it to actually be able to build those cannons and those spears.
Yeah. So
and I just wonder, from the panel's point of view, what do we do to change that mentality? How do we flip our whole view of telco, rather than just inherently just delivering API that will deliver connectivity? That's what it will deliver.
So are we seeing new ecosystems, or are people just talking about it? And then we'll come to that question at the back there. Are we seeing new ecosystems that could enable what Francis is talking about there, and enable people to make money from these Camara APIs and others?
I think so. From the open networks perspective, now all of that control is trickling down even to, with the RIC component coming into the network, that we can actually close the loop if we actually want to, which means that we can ensure some sort of quality of experience happening by enabling some sort of parameter change through the RIC. These are obviously new innovations coming in, and it is down to whoever is building the components of the network to allow us to change on demand some of these parameters. Whereas before, that was not even possible, right? You would just have a completely closed environment, potentially orchestrate some of that, but you wouldn't be able to talk to the RAN at all. And now we're starting to see that. And that is going to be the de facto deployment solution and architecture moving forward. It's going to be based on products that can be configurable and can be changed. I would want to believe that's the case, obviously.
Okay. Manish.
Yeah, I mean, I think this discussion around APIs and open APIs is only part of the solution. I keep hearing this turning into a discussion around APIs and monetization. As I said before, in my view, it's a bigger question of getting the infrastructure, getting the network capabilities done the right way. And as an infrastructure provider, where do we see the puck moving? To the question around monetization and opportunities, we see two things. We see clearly, especially on the enterprise side of the world, moving a lot more towards edge and needing edge compute and edge computing capabilities. We also see a lot of that puck moving towards AI, especially from an inferencing perspective. Not training, not tuning, that's all in there. Data has gravity. Data is getting created by the sensors, more around where the data is getting created. It needs to be consumed, analyzed, and infoed right out there. And so we see clearly a lot of demand building up in the enterprises around that. Now, is that an opportunity and a monetization opportunity for the telcos to think about and participate in? Or somebody else is going to come in and participate in that opportunity? But that part of goal is definitely building up.
Okay. Right, we're going to come to, I think we've got time for one more question. So, yeah, if you could state your name and company.
Sure. Good morning. This is Amit McCann from Cerulean Technologies. I think, well, I believe what you said, Mark, I believe a lot of what you've said. The lack of progress for telecom operators over the last 20 years has been because they've been competing with each other. We need to have more collaboration, and without that collaboration, there's not going to be any growth. The revenues, the margins have been driven down and down and down. In order for us to know who our competition is, the competition is not the other telco. The competition is the other techcos, the Facebooks, the Amazons and the Googles of the world. And we can't compete with them unless the telcos start to collaborate. The open API is just a very small part of that collaboration. We need to do a lot more than that. We need to open ourselves from a business perspective, not from a technology perspective, to be able to collaborate with our other telco partners. And this is really a question to the big telcos like the BT. We're going to have an interview later on. I'd like to ask him, are you brave enough to be able to collaborate so that you can really grow and compete against those techcos?
Okay, are the telcos brave enough? Any opinions? Verna, we haven't heard from you for a while. Are the telcos brave enough to change the way they build their relationships, work with each other, open themselves up?
I think they are probably more than we see. If you look at, we have the benefit of really sitting at a lot of these tables all over the world, having these conversations with the operators. And there's a lot of operator alliances where they collaborate. If you think about the Bridge Alliance and APJ, right? There's dozens of operators that collaborate, that share their plans, where they want to go, how they want to work together. It's maybe a little bit different when you got, a couple of operators in a country competing with each other, right? And beating each other up on pricing, et cetera. But I think on a global level and on an innovation level that we want to talk about, they're very much so collaborating and talking with each other. And I think, as Manish said, the AI conversation it's one tool in the box of enabling to create value for the operators. And we will see that collaboration, I think, even stronger as we go forward in new models, in the speed of innovation that is needed to keep this industry going forward. They don't have a choice but to collaborate with each other closer. And I think that will all actually help us as an ecosystem. If we bring solutions to them, we will see a more rapid adoption from them as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, we do have the appetite to collaborate, for sure. That's exactly what we're seeing. It's what's driving our business model, actually, as a company. I would take just a slight disagreement with part of your point, is that the hyperscalers, however we want to brand them, they are a threat on that, but they operate in a different market. They operate on a global market. We telcos, as an industry, we operate in a regional market. And so, yes, we compete. The telcos, carriers will compete against each other in that regional market, but in a global market, then they don't. It's a different battle. That's where we've seen an opportunity to step in there. And I think, therefore, then the likes of the Facebook, Metas, they also can become partners. They also can become contributors in that. Because ultimately they require our connectivity. The cloud, as it exists, obviously, but you need to connect to it, and the cloud doesn't just exist nebulously. It has to be connected together. They're the people that fill the networks. Well, actually, they don't. It's the end consumer. It's the end enterprise that fills the network, and ultimately, that's what we are in the business of doing, which is utilizing and filling that network and making money off that, and providing a fantastic service on that. And we do that very well as an industry. There is a reason why there is something called carrier grade. That it comes about after what we have done as an industry. And so the adoption of the new world, the closed heads versus the open heads, it's not throwing away the baby with the bathwater. In fact, that's my view on that anyway.
Okay. Any final thoughts from the panel before we fire up the paddle pros?
I think that part of the problem is treating the Metas and all of that as a threat or as a competitor rather than a member of the supply chain that we need to, they are a customer, potentially, and if they make money, we make money. We need to find ways to benefit from them making money and deliver them good services.
Okay. So we managed to get through that without anybody mentioning the fair share debate. So,
We just need a day for this panel.
Touched on it.
So that's the end of this debate time. So we need to move for the vote. So fire uphill paddle pros, but here's a reminder of the motion. Chris was arguing for the motion and Graham was arguing against. But what about you in the room here? Fire them up and let's see what your voting paddles say. Green side forward if you support the motion, red side forwards towards the stage if you're against. So, okay, the motion is very clearly carried. Wow. This is, congratulations, Chris.
But you're absolutely right, Ray. In terms of the way the debate should go, that didn't get anywhere near where I thought it was going to go. So thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Telcos have nothing to fear from the open API approach. There we go.
There you go.
So, thank you, everybody. It's networking time again. So we have 20 minutes to maybe get another drink or chat some more before we come back for the final debate of the morning at 5 minutes to 12. So see you back in here then. Thanks very much. Congratulations to our panel. Thank you.